In this video, we're going to discuss the market institutions that give shape to the exchange space in which most of us live our daily lives without realizing. We're going to focus specifically on the perfectly competitive model, but I'll try to speak to how we apply these institutions and thinking about their function more broadly. Okay. So generally, we say that entrepreneurs rely on market institutions to facilitate market coordination, right? So market coordination and market clearing, what we mean is just that equilibrium point that we identify whenever we draw our supply and demand market graph, excuse me. Okay, this equilibrium point where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, that's what it's defined by, is called coordination. That's where producers are providing exactly as much as consumers want. So the market clears. There's no excess inventory. There's not too little inventory, right? It's just enough for what consumers want at the going price. And we say that the market is coordinated, okay? One of the biggest questions in economics is how do we get market coordination in the real world? How is it that whenever I need groceries, I can just hop over to the store and expect what I need to be there, right? I don't have to call up the grocer to let them know what I'm going to be wanting a week in advance, right? I can go at any time, any day, show up, right? As long as the store is open, and what I want will be there, right? And available for me to purchase. Okay, so how does that happen? And it's really, economists have found that the answer is really the institutions that frame that market, that provide its structure. For this class, I call them the 3 Ps to help you remember them. If it doesn't help you, you can ditch it, right? But these 3 Ps are going to be property rights, prices, and profit and loss, okay? Property rights, we say, provides the incentive to produce, innovate, and exchange, right? If I can't own the goods and keep that I purchase and keep others from using them, then I don't have any incentive to purchase them, right? If I buy a car and anyone can come by and take it and I have no recourse to get that car back, I'm not going to bother purchasing it, right? That's a huge investment. On the supply side, producers without property rights aren't going to have the incentive to produce, right? If they take on the high cost of producing a car, a cell phone, right, whatever the good is, and they sell it, if they can't be sure that they're going to keep their gains from that investment, then they're not going to undertake it in the first place because it's very costly for them, right? They give up a lot to make those goods because they expect to keep the returns. So property rights are central. Without property rights, everything else falls apart. Okay. One thing to note, I'm not telling you what kind of property rights need to exist, right? It could be private property rights. It could be commonly held property rights. What kind of property rights, what they're actually going to look like in reality will depend on the context. It's going to depend on the good that's being traded, right? So you might have situations like the food that we eat or the clothes that we wear where private property rights, where it's I own it and no one else, that works really well, right? Because feasibly, I can't share the shirt that I'm wearing with someone else, okay? But if we think about goods more like common pool resources, our lakes, our air, right? The good air, good quality air, that's something where common property rights make more sense. Where as long as we can identify who's responsible for maintaining that resource and who gets to use it, right? And who to hold accountable if they erode it unfairly, right? As we deem it, that will work as well, right? So property rights don't have to look one specific way, but they do need to be sufficiently defined to provide the incentive for production, consumption, and exchange. The second market institution that we're going to see be crucial for the operation of markets is prices, right? And prices get a very explicit place in our supply and demand graphs, right? They go on that horizontal axis. It's one of our endogenous variables, right? It's one of the variables we want to explain how it arises. And these prices are going to provide information about how consumers value a good and the use of different inputs. So producers can use prices as a guide for how much to produce, where they should send their output, and what to produce, right? So let's say that I'm deciding whether to produce diesel or unleaded gasoline, right? I can refine my oil in one of two ways, right? Let's say they're mutually exclusive and it can either be diesel or unleaded. One thing I'm going to look at is the price for the two, right? The relative price. And so I'll say, okay, sure, the price for diesel is higher, but fewer people buy it. So really, I'm going to be better off making unleaded, right? So I make that unleaded gasoline. And then next, what I'm going to do is look at, okay, what is the demand, total demand, maybe in this state or in this country, right, in the US? And I'm going to use prices and historical production data to evaluate that relative to my own production capabilities, right? What it costs me. And then finally, once I have all of the unleaded that I am going to make, it's produced. Now I have to figure out where to send it. And for that, again, I'm going to use prices. I'm going to see what is the price of unleaded gasoline in San Diego, California, compared to Phoenix, Arizona, right? Usually, the prices in California are at least $1, if not more, higher than the prices in Arizona. So that means that me as a producer, I'm going to send most of my product to California because that's where I can sell it at the highest price. But I'm going to send some to Arizona too, right? Because I can still get returns likely over my marginal cost from selling to that market. Okay. So that's how prices provide that really useful information to guide producers. On the consumption side, consumers respond to prices as well, primarily through how they economize in their use of a good. So how they regulate how much they're going to buy. So think about when gas prices go up, many of us cut back in driving, or we try to group errands together so we're not driving as much. Maybe we take appointments for the doctor virtually rather than going in person. And in that way, we cut back on the amount of gasoline that we're buying. We're reducing our quantity demanded, right? So the prices are telling us, go ahead and reduce your quantity demanded because other people value it more, right? And it could be because the oil workers in Australia are striking. It could be because there's been an oil spill in the Gulf, right? For whatever reason, prices have jumped and we respond by economizing as consumers, okay? And so that that work of prices to signal both consumers to economize in a certain direction and suppliers to provide in a certain direction gets us to that market clearing point, right? But again, it relies on property rights, right? That incentive and certainty that I will get to own the things that I purchase or get to keep in the returns from any investment I make. Lastly, our last P is going to be profit and loss. So profit and loss, we say guides innovation, right? So profit and loss, as we've talked about it in this lecture so far, signals to producers how consumers value the goods that they're making, right? If the consumers value that good and the use of the inputs to make it, then the firm earns a positive profit. If consumers don't value it, then the firm earns a loss, right? And that signal of customer satisfaction is going to then guide firms in how to innovate, right? In our really strict, really simplified, perfectly competitive market, that innovation is limited to market entry and exit, right? Either joining the market or leaving it. If we move out to a more realistic market space, that's going to look at like innovation in a number of ways. It could be changing the characteristics of a product, right? Maybe instead of making it yellow, I make it blue because blue is a more pleasing color to more people, right? And so increase my sales. Maybe I change where my product is located, right? If I'm running a coffee shop, maybe I had it in behind a car dealership and no one knew I was there. And instead I moved to a spot that opens up on the main street of a city's downtown, right? That location change is a way that I'm innovating. I could change the way that I produce it, right? Maybe I make it self-serve so that I don't have to hire as many baristas. I could alternatively, rather than doing coffee and tea, right, just do coffee or just do tea and specialize within those markets. So there's many ways that firms can innovate once we look to a more realistic space. Within the perfectly competitive model, however, it's that innovation is going to be limited to market entry and exit. Okay. Here is a graph or a visualization, I should say, of the 3 Ps and 3 Is. We have property, prices, profit, and loss, right? Property provides, property provides the incentive to produce and exchange. Prices provide the information on what to produce, how much, and where to send it, as well as how consumers should economize. And then finally, profit and loss guides innovation. And our entrepreneur, our firm, takes all of these three I's and adjusts, right, marginally over time, adjust their plans, adjust how they're doing things, as do consumers. And that allows us to see greater market coordination or a more fully cleared market. This last slide here goes into more depth about the profit signal, right? We've talked about it already in previous video, but just to summarize quickly here, right? Profit again is a signal to whether, it's a signal for a producer about whether they're producing something that consumers value, right? It signals their comparative advantage. Are you actually using these inputs for their lowest opportunity costs? Okay. In other words, in the highest valued use. If a firm enters a market within our perfectly competitive model and is earning positive profit, that tells them, yes, you're doing something that consumers value, you're producing according to your comparative advantage. If instead they enter and earn a loss, it's exactly the opposite. Consumers do not value that product. The inputs you're using, people would rather be used to produce something else. You need to get out of here and try again, right? Try another market. And so that's how profit serves as that signal. We'll stop this video here. And then the next one, we're going to look at long run supply with different costs, either constant, increasing, or decreasing.